Okay, I went and I got some cleaner water so that we have a truer color representation. So I'm going to add more water to the alizarin crimson and do a mixture of the alizarin crimson and red. And I'll put that right next to the two colors. Once again, avoiding the space between them so that I don't have the colors bleed into each other. Always cleaning my brush. Adding a little bit more water. You could see with the cleaner water, it's a little cooler from the alizarin crimson. Okay, so then if I'm moving from the cad red toward the cad yellow, so I'm going to get some cad red and add it to my orange mixture. So I had the yellow orange. So I'm mixing cad red and cad yellow to get red orange. Okay, so I'm moving from red toward the cad yellow. And I have here red orange. I'm going to add more water to that. So we have our mid-tone. And then more water to that. So we can have our lighter tone. If there's too much water, you can see a little bit of a bleed, which happened here, where the colors are separating. I'll just go in there. My paintbrush is just damp. It's not really wet. You can soften that. You can use a damp or wet paintbrush to make any corrections. Okay, so this is our orange, our red orange, and I want to try to create a red orange in between. So add a little bit more cad yellow. And this has a lot of water in it, so I'm going to I can tell it's very watery. So I'm adding more paint, which means I can go back into my pans and add more of the hue so that solid color isn't too light. We do want to see how deep can we get with that red orange to orange over to yellow orange. And now I'm going to add water for the mid-tone area. You can see this. And I'll lighten this. Keep in mind you can always pick up paint by using your napkin, taking off pigment off your brush, and then just go with a clean brush, wipe off any excess. With a clean brush, you can go in and wipe off any excess paint. But you have to be careful, you don't want it to bleed into other colors. Okay, so now we're going to jump over to our blue. We've got our yellow, orange, red-orange. This is our alizarin, this was our red. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. This is where we'll put our French ultramarine blue. So to get that French ultramarine blue, and I'm going to change up the water here because that red's pretty powerful. So I'm going to pour some clean water in a new cup. Get rid of the red has a very deep pigmentation. So I'm going to use clean water and put 3 drops of water on my ultramarine blue because I'm working with the warmer end of the color palette. And I'm going to create a puddle of the ultramarine blue here to the right, getting as much pigment as I can, as much of the hue. Count my 6 over from the cad red. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And here I'll go in with my ultramarine blue. Okay, now I'll add some water to that, a couple drops. Over to the right, pull some of the paint out, give us a lighter blue. Looks like I can get a little thicker along the edge here. And then even more water to get our lightest ultramarine blue. Now we have over in this pan, we had a mixture with the alizarin crimson, but I'm going to clean this up because for our warm violets, we're going to mix ultramarine blue, which we have here, with alizarin crimson. And this alizarin crimson will give us some really nice violets. You're going to find that if you try to use cad red with ultramarine blue, your colors will be a little muddy, and we'll talk more about that later. I've got my ultramarine blue with my ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and that gives me my violet. I'm going to add a little bit more water for the mid-tone, and then we'll get lighter as we get toward the center. Pick up this edge here. Let that dry. Let that go over a little bit too far. Here is our violet. You can always dab with a paper towel, and that will lift some of the color. You see that some leaked over here. You have to be careful if you allow watch where the water goes, because the paint will follow the water drops. I just pushed some water up into that. You can just dab it up. Okay, so we have our violet, our alizarin crimson. The two together will make red violet. So over here, I'm going to pull some more alizarin crimson with a little bit of the ultramarine blue. And this will give us a nice deep red violet. And you can see as the violet is drying, as the paints dry, they will dry to a slightly different color than when they first went down, when you first put them down when they were wet. So this is also good, a really good exercise for you to recognize what do you put down and what happens to that color as it dries. Okay, so we've got our ultramarine blue here, and I'm going to take that ultramarine blue and add a little alizarin crimson to it, and that will give us our blue violet. So just picking up a little bit of the alizarin crimson. I'm going to avoid this area until it dries, otherwise I'll just have the colors bleeding. But this is our blue violet. It's the addition of alizarin crimson. It would be nice for it to have a little bit more blue in it. A little bit more blue as we get closer to the ultramarine blue. And then we'll add more over here. This is a good way to see the wide range of violets you can get with just using alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. This is a really good exercise so that you can, as you're trying to look at shadow areas, especially in the transparency project, you can think about how you want to treat your shadows. I notice it's getting a little bit dark down here. I can lift up some of that paint. As you do this color exercise, you're going to see which paints have more pigmentation and which paints do not. So you may have to go in and lift up some of the color just to see to get that lighter value. Okay, I'm going to quickly we're going to let this area dry before I put a color in there. I would like to work on our blue greens we'll be using, if you have cerulean blue or Winsor blue. Once again, I have to clean my palette. Always clean your palette. Just going to get it wet. Use paper towels and clean it quickly. You don't want these colors to mix together. Okay, and this is going to be a little bit cleaner water. You want to keep your water clean as well. Okay, so I'm going to go into the Winsor blue The Winsor blue looks to me similar to a cobalt blue or a cerulean blue. So these blues are leaning toward the cooler side of the spectrum. And when I talk about warm and cool, I'm referring to anything that's in the red, yellow, orange zone is warm, and anything that's in the blue, green, violet zone is cool. So here I'm going to bring my Winsor blue, which is a cooler blue than the ultramarine blue. And you'll see as it dries, it may not be as apparent to you as I'm putting it down, but as you add water to it, with all of these colors, as you add water, you begin to see what happens with the hue. So the more transparent they are, the more you really begin to see what you can do with that particular hue. And here again, it's the Winsor blue close to the cerulean blue. And if I were to take ultramarine blue and mix it with the cerulean blue, which I often like to do, mix two blues or two reds to get something in between. If you're thinking, I'm not quite sure, I don't want to go pure cerulean or pure ultramarine, you could get a mix of the two and watch to see what happens, especially for the sky tone, letting those two colors blend together. Keep in mind what we're doing here. These are just pure hues and tints of them. When I say a tint, it means the amount of whiteness in the color. The tint is showing up from the reflective nature of the paper. So as the light hits the paper, you see the white transparency from the paper coming forward. Okay, so now I'm going to mix my greens. Come around. So I'm going to get my Winsor blue. I'm going to make a puddle of my Winsor blue. And next to it, I'll be using the lemon yellow. Okay, so the lemon yellow is my cool yellow. The Winsor blue or cerulean blue is your cool blue. You want to use a cool yellow and a cool blue when you're mixing your green tones, because that's the cool side of the color wheel. So I'm going to slowly add the blue. Look at how quickly. Blue has a greater pigmentation than the yellow. So I mixed that and it very quickly gave me, I'm going to try to get a green that's in the middle. That turquoise green really jumps up at you. So here we'll move around to our blue greens, our yellow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll come in the middle and let's put our green right here. And then I'll add water to that. Now you can get some nice deep olive greens if you use the cad red with the ultramarine blue, and that's something that you can experiment with on your own. But this is a really good first step at mixing color if you want to really see the hue, the brightness of the color. If you mix a warm hue with a cool hue, you will get more a tonal range, which means tone means it's getting darker, and it can get muddy. But the important thing is, what I'm trying to point out is by mixing cools with cools, warm with warms, you're going to be able to avoid that, avoid getting colors that are muddy. Okay, so I have my green mixture. And as I add cerulean blue to it, you'll see I'll get more turquoise, more of a turquoise color for this green. You see how you don't have to go out and purchase a lot of different tube colors. We're doing this color wheel with 6 colors: a warm and a cool red, a warm and a cool yellow, and a warm and a cool blue. 3 primary colors. Get to know their properties and how they work together. Put more blue in that. Lift up any extra. Now I'll just keep adding yellow to the green mixture as I move into my yellow-green. Tone. And I'll add more yellow. And with each addition of yellow, we're getting more of that bright yellow green. This could be a green, a bright green in a garden. The light shining through a leaf. Sometimes you're really at odds to try, how do I get my color really, really bright? This very bright green, we're able to achieve it with the lemon yellow and the Windsor blue, or if you have a cerulean blue. Now, if you want a more deep olive green, you could do that with a mixture of putting a little bit of red in that bright green, and that will give you more of an olive green. And of course, if you want to experiment with, once you've mixed these color mixes, and let's say you want to experiment with adding a warm, say the cad yellow to this green, you could experiment with that. It might make it more vibrant. But this is a good start. Oh, and we still have our blue violet. So let me get this French ultramarine mixture. And we were mixing it with alizarin crimson. I have to say, the violet shades are very challenging when it comes to watercolors. You may find that you will end up purchasing some very specific colors that support your interest in the violet range. There are just some colors you will not be able to replicate by mixing. However, that is why I recommended this 12 pan kit. It also allows you to add pads to it, add some pans to it. So this is a 12 pan kit, but as you can see up here, there's room for 12 more pans. So as you grow in watercolor and you decide you want to experiment with some different types of blues or some greens, you have room to do that. If I can add a little bit of alizarin, I'm trying to move this into our violet range, and then I'm going to fix our red violet. This is one thing I notice with alizarin crimson and the violets. When I mix alizarin crimson with ultramarine blue, I usually do see this with watercolor, is a separation where you see the colors begin to separate. So you might find that you may want to research and choose a red violet or a pure violet mix that's been mixed by the company, by a specific company. Okay, and there you have your color wheel.